following on from the other videos I've created that go into my story and the challenges I've had and some of the challenges I've overcome, I want to go into another part of my story, and this relates to the need that I had to save or rescue my father, and how as time went by I had to accept that it wasn't my responsibility to save him. And although I'm not sure when my father found out that he had bone cancer, I do remember that in 2008, I think it was, I ended up reaching out to a healer therapist called Errol Campbell, who did something called theta healing. And this was a time when I was also working with someone, and I'd worked with Errol as well, and I was having theta healing. So as my father was not in a good way, I thought that he would benefit from having theta healing. So he ended up working with Errol over a period of a number of months, because he ended up booking in a block of sessions with him. And although the theta healing didn't remove or resolve his illness, which was bone cancer, my father did say that it took a lot of the pain away. So it made it more bearable for him to handle what was going on for him. And my father, I would say, he had not been in a good way for many years. But through having the illness, all of a sudden he received attention and people were more concerned about his well-being because he had an illness, whereas before he was suffering, let's say, mentally and emotionally, so he was suffering in silence. Now he was finally getting the attention that he craved for many years, but up until this point he wasn't able to express. And so people didn't know, but now he had this physical illness, he could receive attention. And I remember it could have been in 2008 or 2009 that I ended up, because I learned theta healing, and I ended up practicing on my father. And when I was connecting to him, I got the sense that although now his physical health was not in a good way, now he was suffering in that way, not just mentally and emotionally, I got the impression that his life was actually, or he was doing better mentally and emotionally than he was before, because he was finally receiving attention. And I said to him, if you could go back to how things were, or something like this, would you go back to how your life was before? Because I get the impression that now although your health is suffering, it seems as though now it's better for you because you're getting attention. And he ended up agreeing. And this made me see that how, although someone can appear to be suffering completely and getting no benefit, there is often a hidden benefit. And to step away from what we're talking about, someone can learn very often that the only way, when they're very young, the only way that they can receive attention is if they're ill or if they're not doing very well. And so when they grow up, being ill can partly be a way for them to, or it can be a way for them to meet their emotional needs. Now, this is not necessarily going to be something that they're consciously aware of, but through being ill, they can receive attention, they can receive love that they wouldn't have got otherwise. And I could definitely see this with my father. I saw that he suffered for many years, And now all of a sudden he was seeing the doctor quite often, and people were saying, "Ron, are you okay? Is there anything I can do?" And suddenly he came to the foreground. And after this, after working with Errol over a period of time, I ended up learning something called reference point therapy with Simon, Rose and Yvette. And after I did the level 1 and 2 in London, the third part or the third level, there was a day or two where it was an open surgery, so people could go in and work with the newly trained practitioners. And I wanted to go and do the level 3, and there was a level 3 course in London, and during the open day, during the surgery, I took my father and my good friend Brian up there. And when we went to London, I think it might have been at King's College, I'm not sure, but we went up there and a woman worked with my father, and she said, "You know, your father works too hard, he does too much, he needs a break." And I said, "Yeah, I know, but it's very, very difficult to get him to step back. And as I say, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, although they say this is not always the case." But my father, through living in the same way, it was very hard to get through to him. But although my father didn't really change that much, he would always take the time to listen to me, and he had an open mind, so he would listen to my views, and hence why he worked with Errol when he went to the Sunday surgery. That's something else. But why he went to the surgery, because he was open-minded, and I think a big part of this was because his mother had an illness, and she was healed by a faith healer. So I think this opened him up to the possibilities of what can take place away from conventional approaches of medicine. So after that, in 2009, he ended up in 2011. He ended up going into hospital and to have something done to his heart. Perhaps it was a new valve or a pacemaker. And he ended up not coming out. And he was on life support, and he ended up passing on perhaps a few months down the line. And this was in September 2011. And although I did a number of things, so as I mentioned, I got him to work with a healer and then took him to the surgery, and I often spoke about different things and even tried what I'd learned on him. I wasn't able to stop him from passing on of the challenges that he had, and at the time I felt responsible. I felt as though it was up to me, partly because of what I was into, and I created this image of myself as a saviour, and I was there to save my family, and it didn't happen. And for many years after, I blamed myself. I thought I should have done more. I felt I should have done more to help him through what he was going through. And it took quite some time for me to partly accept that it wasn't my role to save my father, and that he was on his own path, he was on his own journey, and perhaps he needed to go through what he went through. I don't know what his journey, what his mission was, and depending on what view someone has, there's many ways of looking at it. But this is not something that I'm completely been able to embrace now, but I've certainly come a long way. And I think if someone does get into these things and they are around people who are not doing very well or they're ill, through being into self-development and different healing modalities and having the need to serve, they can feel as though it is up to them to save someone else, to rescue them. And as we are all on our own path, it is not up to anyone to save or rescue anyone else. They can offer their suggestions if they're asked, because it can be easy to offer unsolicited advice and other people can just get fed up and accuse us of trying to control them. Or it happened for me. I was accused of being a preacher, and this was very early on when I just started getting into self-development, and perhaps I may have sounded a bit that way, but my intention was to assist, to do what I could. So this is definitely one of my lessons, is that to accept other people are on their own path, their own journey, and that it's not up to me to save or rescue anyone else. And something that I've also had to think about is how through these people being on their own journey, I've also had to think about what they have been mirroring back about myself. Because if I have seen myself as a saviour or as someone here to rescue others, then I'm going to see people in a certain way instead of, well, perhaps this person is mirroring back something that I need to resolve within myself. So it's been a case of letting go of the self-image that I've had of myself, and to see people like this as a mirror of what I need to resolve within myself. And this hasn't been easy, but through facing this and being compassionate and understanding towards myself and looking into what I need to resolve, it's just been a lot easier for me to forgive myself and not to blame myself for what I didn't do or what I think I should have done. And so perhaps you can relate to this. Perhaps you've been in a position or are in a position where you feel as though you need to rescue someone else. And this will then be a time when it will be essential for you to realise that we are all on our own journey and we can't save another.